Again, this is the paint test. This is the only test that was conducted by Aperture to look at the tail light and the arm in this case, and the interaction between the two.
Did you note whether in all of Aperture's data that you reviewed, whether or not there was any measurements to determine whether the abrasions were consistent with contact with the Lexus?
I did. There were no measurements at all taken with respect to that test. No measurements with respect to where the contact happened on the car or on the arm itself. There was no indication of where that blue paint extended on the surrogate's arm, say from the wrist up to where the laceration or the abrasions would have occurred.
Is that important?
It's very important.
Why?
Because you can't say that the area where the blue paint is corresponds to the area of the abrasions if you don't take measurements. If you just eyeball it, all you can say is by eyeballing it, it looks approximately the same. But that's not scientific. You can't come to an actual conclusion that where that paint covers the arm is where those abrasions actually were. They could lie outside, they could lie forward, they could lie above that painted area. You can't say with any scientific certainty that that area of paint corresponds to where the abrasions are.
In this motion video and the still photograph to the left in slide 24, is that what we're on, 24?
We are, yes, sir.
What did you note with regard to the positioning of the surrogate's arm? I think that's Mr. Welcher, as it relates to the taillight and the back of the SUV.
Yes, the positioning of the arm in the photographs as well as the one test that was performed, the arm is approximately 90 degrees, level in line with the rear taillight of the vehicle.
Did you seek to do any testing approximating the positioning of the arm as you saw it, as you interpreted it in the Aperture data?
I did, yes, sir.
What were you seeking to determine when you did your testing?
Well, if we want to determine whether the orientation and the position of the abrasions on the arm correspond to the tail light, you have to have the arm in the position that you claim it struck the tail light and then look at the abrasions. Because if you're looking at orientation and the direction of the abrasions, you can't look at how they exist with the arm. The only pictures of the arm of the abrasions are with Mr. O'Keefe's arm extended. But that's not how he would have had it according to the test. It would have been at a 90-degree angle.
Dr. Rentschler, were there any peer-reviewed articles cited in connection with Aperture's paint transfer test?
I did not see, I was not provided a single peer-reviewed article with respect to the paint test or any indication of any test or article looking at arm contact with a vehicle or a taillight cover.
Can we go to slide 25? What are we looking at in this slide?
So in this slide, the picture on the far left is the photographs provided from the autopsy in hospital with Mr. O'Keefe's right arm fully extended. Again, those are the only photographs we have.
What about the photograph in the middle and to the far right?
In the middle and the far right, what I did was actually take that arm and then rotate the forearm to put it in a position that it would be in as demonstrated by the paint test with the arm at approximately 90 degrees.
What was the import of this undertaking?
Well, if you look at the paint test and the way the arm's at 90 degrees and having the car come and essentially contact and push the arm out of the way, that's going to give you or tell you the directionality or the direction of the abrasions. Because if you have your arm at a right angle and the vehicle comes and pushes and slides against it on that forearm, you would expect those abrasions to be horizontal, to be in line with that forearm.
Are they?
They're not. You can see some of them are vertical, some of them are angled, some of them it's hard to tell what the directionality is. But if your arm, again, is being struck and pushed this way, as it's pushed and as the car goes by, if this would occur in this manner, you would expect those abrasions to be horizontal in the direction that the vehicle is actually traveling.
When you say horizontal, do you mean horizontal from the elbow to the wrist?
Correct, or parallel, yes, with the forearm.
Can we go to slide 26, please? This is yet again the same video that we saw earlier.
That is correct. This is the paint test video, yes.
And what has to happen in order for the paint in this test to reach the upper forearm?
Well, in this case, to reach the upper forearm, there has to be contact between the forearm and the taillight cover.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What is this slide showing?
Again, this shows, you can see on the right, I added arrows to kind of show the directionality of the different abrasions. And on the forearm, they simply do not line up with the type of kinematics or the type of motion shown in the paint test. Again, of the arm getting pushed out of the way and the car traveling past. If there were going to be abrasions from the fractured glass as it moves along, again, it would be lengthwise parallel to the forearm.
If the arm was positioned as it was indicated in the paint test done by Aperture, would you expect to see this pattern of injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's arm if, in fact, it contacted the taillight and if, in fact, it was abraded based on the taillight?
You would not. You can't get, for instance, horizontal abrasions on the upper arm and somehow get vertical and angled abrasions on the forearm. The kinematics don't work out to actually produce those types of injuries.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
So again, this is the paint transfer test, and it demonstrates there were no measurements taken, so we don't know the exact size or location of that paint or of the lacerations. And you can see the photograph on the right basically shows that after doing the test, a picture of the right arm was put next to it and basically eyeballed to say it's the same, well, it's only approximately the same area.
So I'm going to strike that. So next question.
Do you see any measurements, any tape measures, any laser measuring equipment, anything like that in that right photograph?
Nothing, no types of measurements whatsoever.
Can we go to the next slide, please? This is, on the left, the same video that we've seen several times, correct?
That's correct.
What are we looking at on the photograph on the right?
So on the right, it is the video of this test taken from the side of the vehicle.
Did you notice anything of note in this angle of the paint transfer test?
I did. I slowed this video down, and so as you can see, as it starts out, and you'll see the vehicle starts to slowly back. So there was no photographs showing the position of the arm in the back of the car. The video is from the side, and the top video, you can't tell where the arm is positioned against the tailgate. But whatever positions it's at, you can see as the car backs up here, look at the elbow and the upper arm. If the car backed directly in this direction, there would be no contact with that elbow or the upper arm. And remember, this test is to show where the paint would transfer and if that correlates to the lacerations.
You mean, before you start the video, when you say there would be no contact with the elbow or the upper arm, you mean the biceps area and from the elbow up?
That's correct.
Is that based on the photograph on the right and the positioning of the surrogate?
Exactly. You can see right now, if the car just backed directly straight back, it would not contact the elbow or the upper arm.
Before you play the video, what did you note when the car from the angle to the right of the video on the right? What did you note as the car, just before the car starts to make contact with the surrogate? What did you note? So
in order to get that pattern on the arm, right as the car contacts the arm, the surrogate pushes his elbow forward, leans into the car against the light, and then rolls off.
Can you play that for us, please? Did you see what you were describing in that video?
I did, and I can slow it down. So you can see, even at this point, as the car approaches, it would not contact the elbow or the biceps. So as it comes in, watch the elbow all of a sudden shoot in. Surrogate turns his arm in and then leans against the light cover. So this is not indicative of someone standing there and having a car back into their arm. In order to get that pattern of pain on the arm, someone would have to stand there, and as the car approached and contacted their arm, they would have to actually push their arm forward and lean into it to get that pain pattern.
Is that, in your view, proper scientific testing?
Sustained.
Let's move to the next slide, please. What is this?
And so this is that same event, and you can see I slowed it down even more just so you can see the actual movement of the elbow and the upper arm to get that pattern.
Thank you. Can we move to the next slide, please? This is slide 30. And let's go to 31.
Yeah, this is 31.
I'm sorry, 31. What conclusions or opinions did you reach or could you reach after reviewing the totality of the results of the paint transfer test?
The paint transfer test, all it can show is the approximate of where the arm was covered in paint as the surrogate jammed his elbow in and rolled against the taillight cover. So it tells us nothing about what may have actually occurred, how the lacerations were actually, or the abrasions were produced. It doesn't talk about the kinematics of the arm to actually cause those abrasions. All it does is just say, under this specific condition, if someone was to stand there and then shoot your elbow forward and lean in, you would get paint on this approximate part of the arm, because we don't even have any measurements for it. That's the only thing that test demonstrates, and that's the only test that was conducted to look at the interaction between the arm and the lexus in this case.
Did you reach any opinions and conclusions regarding whether the physical evidence is consistent or inconsistent with the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
I did, yes.
And what are what's the basis?
The basis is looking at the number of laceration or the number of abrasions on the arm, as well as the orientation and direction of those abrasions. And they don't correspond to how the arm would interact with the vehicle if it was at a right angle and struck by the rear of that vehicle.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Doctor?
I do, yes, sir.
Can we move to the next slide, please? Actually, slide 33. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.